People who were raised by doomsday preppers, what was it like? Like others here, my mom wasn't a full-blown prepper. She's a woman who likes the idea of being prepared during an emergency. When my mom got a big tax refund a few years ago, she stocked up on about a year's worth of non-perishable foods, emergency supplies, and we learned survival skills. Although we ate all the food not due to an emergency, but due to hard economic times, it was a major relief to have something to fall back on when times got tough. Some of the weird things though, we had a plan to get to Canada. Seeing my mom thought Bush was going to declare martial law. Prepping saved me from homelessness once. I had enough food and supplies to last for 4 months, enough time to get back on my feet. Keeping myself debt-free and prepared was a lifesaver. Not raised, but I rented a room in a prepper's house for a few years. The guy was super nice and didn't come across as crazy, except for his massive distrust of govt. He had chickens and food that would last them for years. Pros: fresh eggs every morning. Cons: chicken coops smell like chicken crap. This wasn't all that weird as we were in rural New Mexico. In the house, there were a few closets completely full of dried beans and rice in airtight containers. Other drawers had MREs, various supplies you might take camping, etc. To be quite honest, it was not at all bothersome and actually gave me a lot of comfort that, on the odd chance he was right in his weird predictions, we would be ready. I think a lot of people could be better prepared for disasters than they are. I would get kicked out of the bomb shelter if I were continuously fed beans : I had a very good friend in high school whose grandparents raised him. They were pretty religious people and believed fully and completely in the whole Mayan calendar doomsday thing, but they were Christian. So, they saved up all this canned soup, because canned soup will save you from doomsday, and believed that if they hid in their basement during doomsday that they would be able to survive. But in 2012, when it didn't happen, they took it a step further. They decided to move the whole family, 3 children, to Utah to live on a secluded farm in order to save up for and prepare for the future doomsday. They believed that they would be told by Jesus somehow the next doomsday, and by hiding in their basement in their large house in the middle of nowhere Utah, their lives would be saved. And from then on they would have to repopulate with all of the people who were saved after Armageddon. My friend used to call my crying. Keep in mind he was 15-year-old kid, because he was so upset about what his grandparents were making them do. It was pretty fricked up. Update: since I have gotten so many replies, I'm going to look into where he is and what he is doing. I'll answer as soon as I find out. I'll be up answering questions if anybody else has any. Update: I did find him on social media, but he hasn't uploaded in about a year. I have some connections through friends. I'll try to figure out how he is doing. Update: I have contacted a friend and he apparently is living here and has a job at a shopping center, so I at least know he is doing okay. He also apparently has a girlfriend. I know I keep updating, but I'm trying to keep the story up as soon as I get info. Update: I was finally able to make contact with him this morning. He is living in a small apartment with his girlfriend, and he's doing fine. I'm sure he has some crap to work out. He doesn't have contact with his grandparents anymore, but his sisters call him a couple times a year. They are apparently being homeschooled, but he doesn't buy it. That's all I really got out of him before his girlfriend texted me and became angry that I was attempting to flirt with him. So I backed off, even though I'm in a committed relationship. But whatever, at least he is doing fine. He seemed like he was in a pretty good place, just has a crazy overprotective girlfriend. They were pretty religious people and believed fully and completely in the whole Mayan calendar doomsday thing, but they were Christian. Dat logic. My sides, they hurt. While I wouldn't say doomsday preppers, my family is pretty big into survival skills and food storage and all that. I guess I had a normal childhood. My family keeps food storage and we used to have some 50-gallon drums to hold water in before we had to empty it to move. I spent my childhood learning knot making, camping, survival skills, shooting, and a bit of woodworking. My favorite story has to be when I went on a survival trip with my Boy Scout troop a few years ago, and we slept without tents or food or a fire source and fished mussels out of a lake to eat. Life is pretty normal aside from my ridiculous stash of camping gear for Boy Scout and backpacking trips. If there's anything I've learned from all of this, it's that self-sufficiency is one of the best feelings you can have. It's the combined meaning of hope, confidence, and strength. Prepping. Relax, we're not all lunatics afraid of zombies or some neo-fascist government takeover. Some of us are Canadians who remember harsh winters when the power would go out for a few days. Some of us are Americans in the North Cascades. Winter is coming, if we don't burn down first. My in-laws are the only people I know who could even come close to being described as preppers. My Phil slowly acquired various skills over the course of 30-40 years. He's an electrician by trade, a ham radio operator. He took up astrology to learn the ephemeris and how to read stars, woodworking and carpentry. He's licensed to own a handgun. He has Nokia cell phones stashed away, wrapped in tin foil to protect against them. My mill can make her own clothes, plants a small hobby farm's worth of vegetables every year, pickles, jams, cans and preserves all of it. She can slaughter a pig and butcher it. This is just a short list. They certainly aren't the most hardcore about it, but they still bring bug out bags when they come to visit. My wife wasn't raised a prepper. They did all this right out in the open. There are only clues that you can see looking back that reveal a pattern or long-term plan. I was raised by a common sense prepper father, and I am eternally thankful for the time he spent teaching us and training us the skills he did. My father was divorced from my terrible mother and had custody of all 3 children. He did not prep for the big earthquake, or 2012, or any other crap like that. He prepared for situations that we were regularly in danger of, such as wildfires that would take out an entire neighborhood, or blizzards that prevents us to shop for close to a week, or drought. But most certainly, he taught us self-sustainability to reduce living expenses, and to always have in our heads that another depression or catastrophic agricultural failure will happen again. So, he taught us how to grow all the produce we would eat year long, including preserving for winter. He taught us methods of saving water, and preparing our gardens for droughts. He also taught us how to raise chickens, rabbits, ducks and geese, as well as fishing and hunting. He taught us to always have a wood heater with a cord of wood, or kerosene heater, with stores of kerosene, because the years he could not work due to health, we had to depend on that wood stove and kerosene heater due to little money. He also taught us firearm responsibility, how to make fire different ways, first aid, medicinal plants, budgeting a savings just in case, etc etc. It made for a very interesting and well-rounded childhood. To this day, I teach my daughter the same skills and mindset, regardless of our success. Better to be prepared than sorry. I don't call that prepping. I call that basic common sense. As a child raised in a rural environment, these were all the things we were expected to know how to do. We grew and canned so much of our food that it blew my 12-year-old mind that you could get bags of frozen vegetables at the store whenever you wanted. Hey everybody. Sometimes I feel like we dismiss preppers as paranoid idiots who want the world to fall apart. I'm a prepper, and I like to think I'm not an idiot. The idea is to have the tools and rations to comfortably survive minor disasters, as well as supplies for long-term emergencies. For instance, in the short term, I have a couple blankets in my car during the winter months, along with some bottled water and a little bit of food, plus of course a backpack and some other tools like a knife. Long term, I maintain a sizable garden and set aside canned and dried food in my basement. I make sure my plants are of the heirloom variety so that I won't have any trouble replanting the seeds. These are those most basic of my preparations, but they could really make a difference in an emergency. Things that could potentially affect my area include short term flooding, extended power outage, snowed in, other natural disasters, etc. Longer term, economic troubles, foreign wars creating a terror risk, or economic troubles, a disease outbreak that is dangerous enough that I don't want to go shopping for my next meal. Extreme cases, while highly unlikely, are something that don't hurt to think about. The Yellowstone supervolcano, if it erupts, would cause massive food shortages and potentially a period of cold climate, especially in North America. Nuclear attack, very unlikely, but possible, either through terrorism, an individual bomb, not launched, but transported, or think Jericho, or if an unstable country is taken over by terrorists or someone else insane, particularly in the Middle East. I don't think most anybody thinks of people like you as idiots. It's those people who are scared of the outside world counting Mayan calendars while muttering under their breath that give folks like you a bad name. I bet you'd be a great neighbor. There are many people who prep not for an apocalyptic event but for other things such as financial collapse, invasion by hostile government, or general breakdown of society, etc. While the prepping is similar, the motives are different. They tend not to go quite as overboard as doomsday preppers. They do keep well armed and have a bug-out bag handy and a set of skills geared to survival. Yeah, but on prepper forums this is all known as jitwalkie, the end of the world as we know it. No matter what causes it, it's all doomsday. Men just aren't religious fanatics. My stepdad is Baha'i and believes in an economic collapse sometime soon. My mom thankfully doesn't share the sentiment and gets upset whenever he goes on rants about the upcoming collapse. Besides that, it wasn't too bad. For Christmas I buy him collapse themed books and my mom will get mad at me for encouraging him. Oh, and he also stockpiles silver. He will make regular trips to get cash exchanged for silver, and somewhere in the house is a treasure trove of silver. Why silver? Because gold is too expensive. My girlfriend's parents are preppers. Oddly, the entire family are very normal with the exception of copious amounts of canned goods. Wouldn't know a thing if you didn't ask. Prepping like that should be more normal. From reading this thread, I realized having resources in case of emergency is pretty handy. Not really a prepper type thing, but my grandmother, and every other older person, bought hundreds of Beanie Babies waiting for the day that the current gold and silver standard economy we have breaks down and we use Beanie Babies as currency. Beanie Babies are anonymous and outside of the government banking system. Smart woman. My boss was really into the personal defense weaponry aspect of all of this. Guns, Russian fight training, knife play, etc. It always made me feel like in a real meltdown he would be one of the first to be targeted because everyone knew about his collection. I always try to remind people that we, the world, have been through some serious situations before and we got through them acting as a cooperative groups, not a bunch of violent individuals. I'm not familiar with Russian fight training, but based on how seriously they take roulette, I wouldn't mess with him. It's pretty weird. My mom is into it, my dad isn't. I don't remember when it started, but my mom was really into Catholic prophecy. Back when I was maybe 10 she got really into it. She said that the apocalypse would begin before I was 16. She had this whole timeline where there would be 3 days of darkness and a bunch of other stuff. It didn't happen. She used to be into the idea of Nibiru, which is this planet that's on a very weird orbit that takes it very far away from the sun. When it comes near Earth, it shoots comets at us or something. It isn't real. She also believes in something called killshot, where the sun shoots lasers at the Earth. I'm not sure how that's supposed to work. She wasn't very into 2012, but she was open to the idea. Recently she's been more into societal collapse type apocalypses. She invested tens of thousands of dollars in gold, because after the financial and electrical systems fall apart she will be able to access her vault and sell her gold or something. She said society would collapse July 2013. That didn't happen. But right now her end of the world date is this October. It has to do with China, and also God's punishment for gay marriage. She doesn't actually prep much. She buys lots of flashlight and things, but I really don't think she'd survive an apocalyptic event. She is into herbal medicine, because after society collapses she wants to be a healer. I never believed her, but it was stressful, because I never really 100% knew. There's always a part of me that says, oh my god, what if she's right? But I know it's crazy. The main fallout is that she spends a lot of money on stuff and that every freaking plant has some medicinal purpose she has to point out. I also know a lot more about conspiracy theories than the average person, and it has kind of complicated my relationship with religion, but overall it wasn't too bad. She invested tens of thousands of dollars in gold. Depends when she made that investment. If she bought all that gold before 2009, she could have turned a nice profit. I have a shitting of supplies in the basement, and like 8 million cans of cat food. I feel like the cats would last longer than the fam. If you all die first, the cans of cat food won't be necessary. I have no prob with this scenario for myself. Plus cats can't open cans. My dad is an atheist doomsdayer. In the 80s, he thought there would be a race war. He's racist, but not openly in public. Only his family really knows. He made a lot of jokes when we were kids, like when we did something we shouldn't. He'd say, "Don't do X. White people do it like this." Haha, I know. So gross. Later, he worried about the climate or whatever was in the news. He owns a bunch of land with a barn on it. It's where he'll go live off the land if the crap hits the fan. When I was a kid, our house was off the grid. We had solar panels in the early 80s. We had a room filled with batteries the size of car batteries. They have since crapped out and he's trying to recycle them somehow. We had a huge garden and canned a lot. He bought antique, wood and coal powered steam engines and horse powered threshers, and draft horses, so we could farm without gasoline, should we need to do so. He saved everything. He is a hoarder, but not the dead cats and trash kind. He saved containers, scrap wood, whatever he thought would be useful. He was crazy about waste and overconsumption. He had a system everyone had to follow in order to wash dishes with the least amount of water. In the Midwest, we didn't have AC or central heat, just a wood-burning stove. He heated all our bath water in the winter on the stove to save energy. My mom pretty much went along. He relaxed a bit over the years, which saved their marriage. Oh. My dad likes to be prepared for any and all disasters that may occur, natural or man-made. He treated every day like the worst possible thing would happen if certain precautions were not taken. As a result, I was raised to be very aware, despite the lack of likeliness of some events, of any and all dangers related to the following: stranded in the woods, stranded in the desert, severe weather, intruders, firearms, child predators, falling pianos, fraudulent checks, etc. Ultimately, everything was potentially very dangerous, and therefore everything should be approached with the most caution possible. When Y2K theories came around, my dad stuck to that like white on rice in a snowstorm. He spent literally almost all of his free time preparing in any way possible for what he saw as an imminent crap storm. Definitely spent New Year's of 2000 crying in our fortified basement clutching a gas mask surrounded by several years worth of food, medical supplies, water drums, guns, and ammo. Even after the threat of Y2K faded, my dad kept up with the emergency bunker, and calls it a hobby instead of prepping now. In the late 1960s, someone pinpointed a particular date that California would fall into the Pacific Ocean. Me and some friends, we were still in elementary school, built a raft in my folks' backyard and stocked it with saltine crackers in the old metal boxes, several chubs of Italian salami, and a 5-gallon jerry can full of water. We sat on the raft after school the forecast day until my mom called me in for dinner and sent the other kids home. My mom stocked up on so much vacuum sealed toilet paper, rice, and beans for Y2K, we were still using it over a year later. My dad made a big deal about the coming of Y2K, but then when it got down to it, all he did was fill up a big trash can with water and literally nothing else. I guess my mom is a prepper. Enough food for 2 years in the house. God knows how much else stored in various places on the farm. Guns, 4 gardens, tons of farm animals to eat. I don't know, my mom is kind of crazy, but life was pretty normal growing up aside from having to be home every time a doomsday thing happened. Y2K, start of the LHC, end of the Mayan calendar, and now that I live further away from home I have a chest freezer and generator thanks to mom, and she often tells my husband and I we need to take off work days of major solar flares. Her new end of the world cause. Reminds me, Jehovah's Witnesses are reminded often to have a go bag ready for when doomsday is about to kick off. Just another attempt to get their flock to believe it's imminent. But they've been saying that since the 1800s and have falsely stated the year it would happen at least 4 times. after which they erase all trace of ever saying it and declare you a troublemaker if you ever bring it up. Source: I'm a trapped in one. I'd like to get out, as would thousands who've found out it's based on lies, but leaving means your JW family and friends are ordered not to speak or even say hello to you if you do, else they'll be kicked out as well. If everybody gets kicked out, nobody gets kicked out. My parents got real into doomsday prepping from the time I was in middle school until the end of high school. It screwed with my head a lot. They were certain the world was going to end or drastically change within a few years, and that life as we knew it would change completely, or we would all die, because the Bible. Duh. Anyways, it didn't affect my life that much other than mentally. My mom kept a huge store of food in the basement, and they would always lecture us on what to do when the world ends. The rapture was coming. Mostly it just made me feel like putting effort into succeeding was not useful, because we were all going to die anyways. I grew out of that eventually, when I realized that the reasons the world was going to end was just conspiracy. I'm pretty normal now, other than the fact that I'm helping my parents build their bug out cabin for when the world ends. I try not to think about that stuff too much anymore though. My GF's father was a prepper. He used to make the family do evacuation drills at different times of the day: morning, afternoon, evening, middle of the night. He dedicated an extra bedroom of the house to non-perishable goods, like canned foods, paper plates and eating utensils, gas and oil. I'm not sure what else was in there. Oh, obviously guns and ammo. All the money he earned was put towards his stockpile, except for a small amount for whatever he needed to last him until his next paycheck. He has a very well-paying job, but he won't use any of his money to help my GF with, well, anything. She wasn't able to get financial aid for school because she was still dependent on her parents and his income is too high for her to qualify. She doesn't want to take out a student loan. She's 24 now and we live together, so she's no longer dependent. I'll tell her about this thread and see if she would like to post in it herself. I'm sure she has a lot to say. I know I'm late to the party, but I actually have a story that mostly relates. It's not really about how it affected me, other than for a week when I was 13, but it is kind of funny. I hope that's okay. So, I wasn't raised by a hardcore prepped, but my grandpa is one. He started stocking for Y2K about 5 years prior. My siblings and I never really thought much of it because we were raised in the mindset of grandpa is crazy, so we should just smile and nod when he goes off into his the world is going to end rants. Anyways, the new year comes and goes and life continues on as normal. 3 years goes by, school lets out for the summer, and my dad received a call from my grandpa. Grandpa wants to borrow me for a week so I can help him move all of his stuff from one storage unit in our home state to his current state, so it'll be closer just in case the world ends. I've read some troubling things in the paper, son. Next thing I know, my grandpa and I are standing in front of a 20 by 35 foot storage unit, filled top to bottom with those plastic storage tote things. These things are filled with dollar store flashlights, duct tape, rope, batteries, socks, undies, and who knows what else. As the days wear on, and my 13-year-old self is starting to get very tired of hauling these totes into the back of a rental truck and then driving for 8 hours just to turn around and do it again, I notice something. We have emptied out about 30 feet deep into the unit. The next row of stuff was toilet paper, wall to wall, floor to ceiling. A row of toilet paper. I'm thinking cool, something useful. Boy, was I right. The last 5 feet deep was toilet paper. Oh my god. So much toilet paper. We ended up making the last load with nothing but toilet paper in the back of the rental truck. Again, years go by and my dad once again received a call from my grandpa. The year is 2012. He is calling to complain about how he has finally ran out of toilet paper and now has to go buy a pack. TLDR. My grandpa didn't have to buy toilet paper for 12 years. My parents bought a farm and built their own house. We had an orchard, animals, and crops. I guess they didn't have a specific doomsday in mind, just a general idea that society would collapse. I think it was due to them being big geeks in the 70s before it was cool. They both got stuffed in trash cans in high school, before eventually meeting at a D&D quest at Berkeley. They were atheists, with a general anti-society vibe. Our property was always referred to as the family compound and they absolutely planned for everything. We even had a well with a specially designed water treatment system that was supposed to be able to filter out toxins that they believed would be in the groundwater someday. I wasn't allowed to watch TV. I had to learn how to grow vegetables and slaughter animals, and I had to learn leather work in case I needed a trade skill after society fell apart. What was it like? Lonely. It was hard to make friends since TV and video games weren't allowed in my house. Original Nintendo came out while I was in elementary school. I missed out. Everyone talked about shows on TGI Friday, and I had no idea what that was. Also, I was pretty traumatized by the whole slaughtering animals thing. But as an adult, I guess I am glad to have practical survival skills, just in case I don't prep. In fact, since I got cancer and had my thyroid removed, there is no point in my prepping. I wouldn't be able to get my meds without a working society, so I would die. I find that kind of comforting. It means no worries about living after things fall apart, no post-apocalypse fantasies for me. Now that prepping is popular, I am starting to see it as some kind of mental disorder. As a kid I thought my parents were harmless and their hate of society was harmless. As it has become a more popular lifestyle, I have started to really worry about how large amounts of people rejecting society will lower the overall quality of our communities. Oh sweet, a chance to share my story. Living on the farm when I was younger was always difficult. I grew up with 6 brothers and sisters, all around the same age. My father would constantly talk about the end of the world and how we had to prepare for it. One of his biggest quirks, which I remember most vividly, was that it was very important to him that my siblings and I grow big and strong. A lot of the time we would have things done to us like pour excess amounts of water on me and my siblings, which I assumed was some sort of testing or conditioning to push us to our limits. We were never abused though. We got the occasional bruise from general wear and tear of growing up on a farm. My mother was also very fairly concerned with the end of the world, though I have to imagine that it mostly stemmed from my father's beliefs. To her though, it was very important that we found a partner to continue the family tree sooner in life rather than later, because our family, according to her, had a very short lifespan. I think I finally decided it was time to separate myself from the family when my oldest sister was taken away from our home one day. She was still of a ripe age and I don't think many of us really understood what was happening except for me. My parents just said it was the reason we have to be ready for the end of the world, and rarely ever spoke of her or did anything to get her back. When the time for world domination came, my parents were amongst the leaders of the Peppers, but I really wasn't going to be a part of the coming of the end of the world, so I had already distanced myself from them by this point. Last I heard they had been killed and turned into a really spicy salsa, but that's the life of a Doomsday Pepper. God dang it. When I was a kid, my babysitter was an older woman who really believed in Doomsday events. I vividly remember her Y2K prepping. She bought ungodly amount of canned and freeze-dried food, toilet paper for at least the next 10 years, and so many crates of bottled water. One of the things she had read told her to buy fruit roll-ups because they were quick and easy calories that never expired. Well, kids being kids, we snuck into her storage and ate so many fruit roll-ups, I mean hundreds of them. I remember being so sick afterwards. Everyone is stocking up on toilet paper, of all the things. Lots of the posts in this thread say that. We regard it as so essential, but since I started living in Asia last December, I've all but stopped using it. This probably means that most Doomsday survivors would be Asian, since they can fill their toilet paper free storage space with food and water. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.